Hello, welcome or welcome back to my channel and welcome to another video where I'm gonna be telling you about the books I read in October, November and December. Okay, so I have quite a few books to tell you about and I'm gonna try to make this not take, 3 hours. And so the first two books I'm going to be telling you about are actually part of the same series, and so they are The Butcher's Masquerade and The Eye of the Bedlam Bride, which are books 5 and 6, I think, of the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, which is like sci-fi fantasy. And since these are books 5 and 6, I'm not really gonna get into the specific plot of the books because I would like spoil everything, but I'm gonna be telling you about like the premise of the series. And so we follow Carl, and he is a human. And one night at I think 2 a.m., everyone on Earth who had like a roof over their heads died because everything like collapsed with an alien invasion, and so only the people who were like outside survived. And Carl was at that moment outside, and he was with Donut, who is a cat, his ex-girlfriend's cat, more specifically, who he was cat sitting at the moment. And with the alien invasion, like the people who survived, they were told that they could go through the crawl in the dungeon, and there are like I think 18 levels or something of the dungeon, and so people would have to go underground and keep going further and further down. And at the end, like if someone wins, they have like a huge prize. And this is like kind of like a video game-ish, because they have stats, they have XP, they have skills and like levels of skills, they have an inventory, and at the same time it's like on TV for other aliens, so like it's a reality TV show at the same time. And they go through the various different levels of the dungeon, and it's very fun and it's very action-packed, and we are like learning a lot about the other species of aliens, like about the politics in like the grand scheme of things, who's like controlling all of this. And I absolutely love Carl, I love Donut, I love their dynamic together. And like these books are super fun, but especially like these last two have gotten like pretty serious and emotional as well. So I really liked both. And The Butcher's Masquerade I gave 4 stars, and The Eye of the Bedlam Bride I gave 4.5 stars. Then I read They Bloom at Night, and this was horror fantasy, and you're following Noon, and after a hurricane and some floods, some weird like red algae has been sort of like taking over their city, and there are like a lot of disappearances, and there's talk of like something lurking in the water. And Noon and someone else, they are tasked with finding this being, this creature that is causing these disappearances, and that is causing like that is scaring people basically. And so we are following her as she goes on this mission, and at the same time there are like changes happening like to her. So there was like an element of body horror that I really liked. It was very creepy, very scary. I usually like body horror, like when it's on humans, I really like body horror. So that was, very creepy and kind of gross in a good way. And I also really liked the like other elements of the horror, and I also liked Noon as a character, and I also like the like conversations that were had in the book. And yeah, I really enjoyed it overall, and I gave it 4 stars. Then I read Catabasis, which was one of my anticipated books of 2025. It was actually probably my most anticipated book of 2025, and this is like fantasy and dark academia, and you're following Alice, who is a grad student of like magic, and she wants to be like very well known, very successful in this field of magic. And her supervisor actually dies in a magical accident that may or may not have been Alice's fault. And she, to succeed in her career, she needs, or she thinks that she needs, a recommendation letter from her supervisor, who is now dead. So she decides to go into hell to get him and get the recommendation letter that she wants. And so she, finds a way to get into hell, and Peter, who had the same supervisor as her, goes with her as well. And they, are exploring hell. They are going through the various circles of hell. And I really liked the, exploration of hell. I thought that was really fun. but I didn't like love the characters, and I definitely didn't like the romance because this was like rivals to lovers supposedly. So I didn't love that. There were a couple times that I was bored. Like I said, wasn't really connecting to the characters. There were definitely like some moments in which I liked them, but other moments I was just like not really vibing. I definitely didn't like I said, the romance. And the end I definitely liked because like Alice was very iconic in the end, so that was really fun to read. But I liked it, I just didn't love it as much I expected, and I expected it to be like immediate 5 stars, and it wasn't. It was still fun, I still had a good time, and I gave it 3.5 stars. Then I read Play Nice, which was horror, and in this one we were following Cleo, and she, like in the beginning of the book, her mother dies, and she like gets the house where she and her mom and her 2 sisters, I think, lived for a while when they were kids, but they, like after that brief period of time when they were kids, they didn't really have like a good relationship with their mother like afterwards, and so they didn't really have a connection to her. And then she goes into the house, and what she remembers of the house, or what she has been told about the house, because she's the youngest, so she was pretty small, is that the house was possessed. Not haunted, possessed. And her mother actually wrote a book that Cleo was never really allowed to read, and her sisters also didn't really want to read because, like I said, they didn't have a good relationship with their mother, and the other 2 sisters, like being older, they remembered things better, and so they never really read the book. But Cleo, when she's in the house, she finds a copy of the book and she starts reading, and she starts remembering some of the things that happened in the house, and at the same time she starts experiencing some things in the house as well. And I really like those moments. I really liked the creepy moments that we experienced in the house, but we were always following Cleo like outside of the house as well, just like living her life, like starting a romance, and I just did not care because I didn't care about the characters like particularly. So like I only liked it when you were in the house like actively being haunted, so the rest I didn't like. It was not really that fun to me. So like it was okay, I liked it, I just didn't love it, and I gave it 3 stars. Then I read My Ex the Antichrist, which was also horror, and in this one we were following Lily, and she was basically like telling her story of how her ex was the Antichrist, and like how they met, how they started dating, how they formed a band, and like how she discovered that he was the Antichrist. And I like didn't care about anything. I didn't care about Lily, I didn't care about their story, I didn't care about the Antichrist, I didn't really care about anything. I was just like honestly bored, and like most of it wasn't even like that scary either. Like only the end was like more intense and definitely more fun as well, but like overall I was just like I didn't care, and I was kind of bored, and I gave it 2.5 stars. Then I read Spider to the Fly, which was thriller horror-ish, and we're following Ellie, and she got like really obsessed with the case of a serial killer after she saw that one of his victims looked exactly like her, and she got really like involved in trying to figure out like who that killer was, because he hasn't been found yet, and his nickname was the Spider. And so she gets like really obsessed with that case. And then one day they arrest her therapist as, the main suspect of being that serial killer. And she's like sure that it wasn't him because like she knows him. And so she is also now like pretty determined to prove that he's innocent. And as she's like trying to prove his innocence, we are also like learning about her childhood, like things that she even she doesn't like remember. And it's like crazy. It gets pretty intense. It gets crazy both like in the past and the present timelines. And like I was thrilled. I was very curious. I was on the edge of my seat. I was having a really good time. It wasn't like perfect, but overall I had a really good time, and I gave it 4 stars. Then I read Sharp Ends, which is book 7 in the First Law world, and this is a collection of short stories. And I love being back in this world. I love being back with characters that I haven't seen in some time, and to learn like the backstories about some of them, and also learning like meeting some new characters and like following them throughout, I think 3 or 4 stories as well, and like those characters were really fun as well to follow. And I really liked to see like what was happening during the previous books, but like from other POVs. That was really fun as well. And like there were like 1 or 2 stories that, you know, weren't my absolute favorite, but overall I really like them. And like the last one, it shows the backstory of a character that we've known like the entire series, and like we knew, you know, their version of events, but like here we see everything in a new light, and that was so interesting to see. Like that was probably like my favorite story. It was the last one. It was so good, so good, obsessed. And yeah, overall I had such a good time. I loved, like I said, being back in this world, and I gave it 4 stars. Then I read What Stalks the Deep, which was the 3rd book in the Sword Soldier series, which is a series of horror novellas, horror fantasy-ish novellas, and was also one of my anticipated books of 2025. And we follow Easton in the series, who used to be a soldier, and they are contacted by a friend that we had met in the 1st book, actually, because that friend's cousin went missing when he went to explore like a cave. And so Easton goes there to like meet their friend and learn more about, you know, the cave and like why they went there and all of that. And then they also go into the cave and they are like exploring, and there are definitely like some creepy sounds and things that they were seeing happening in the cave. It like was pretty creepy. I was having a good time. But then like when we learned what the creepy element was, like what was causing all of it, like I wasn't really creeped out anymore. And so I really liked the beginning, like the lead up to all of it. But then when you got the reveal, I was just like, nah, it's fine. And like I do really love Easton, and another character as well, like a recurring character that has appeared in all the other books and is like always with Easton. Like I really love the characters and I like following them, but I think this was definitely like my least favorite in the series. But I still had a good time overall. Like I still enjoyed it, and I still gave it 3.5 stars. Then I read Among the Burning Flowers, which is book I think 0.2 in the Roots of Chaos series, and it's like one of the prequels of the Priory of the Orange Tree, and like set like right before the Priory of the Orange Tree. And it was also one of my anticipated books of 2025. And so in this book we are following like 3 different characters. And so we follow Marosa, and she is a princess but also kind of like a prisoner in her own home. You also follow the guy that she like betrothed to, and you also follow Estina, who hunts draconic beasts, because in this world there is like the, you know, evil power, and there are like wyverns and worms that like work for that power. And you know, a lot of years ago they were all imprisoned, but now they are starting to be released again. And so Estina is killing some of those creatures. And there is like, we know in the Priory of the Orange Tree that there is a kingdom that is sworn to the dark. And so like in this book we are seeing how that happened and like why, and we are following those characters as well. And it's like very interesting to see like how that came to be, and also was really fun to see like some familiar characters. And like it was very like dark and sad at the same time. Like you could really feel the desperation of the characters. Like the only thing I would have liked to have happened that I didn't is like the resolution of like what happened to one character, like more closure with that character, because we didn't really, you know, get enough closure, at least like in my opinion. But overall I really liked it, and I gave it 4 stars. Then I read We Are Always Tender with Our Dead, which was a horror book, and it was book 1 in the Burnt Sparrow series. And like I, at the time that I started reading this book, I didn't even know it was going to be part of a series. I only found out like later when I finished reading the book. And so we are following Rupert, who lives in Burnt Sparrow, like that's the name of the town. And on Christmas Day, I think, Christmas Eve, I think Christmas Day, 3 faceless strangers arrive at the town, and like they commit a massacre. And so we see then how the people in the town like deal with their dead, and also how they deal with those 3 people who appear there and how they, you know, treat them. And we are following Rupert as he's like dragged into all of this, and at the same time like he's struggling with how he's having to deal with all of this. At the same time, his like family life, his home life, is not good either. And so like he's struggling on all fronts, honestly. And we are just seeing how he's trying to adjust to all of this. And like, I liked it, but I didn't love it. And I mean, it was definitely like disturbing, which is what I expect from this author's books and like what I want from this author's books. But it was not exactly like story-wise, it was not really what I was fully expecting from it. So like, it was interesting for sure. It was, not sure fun is a word, but it was entertaining to read, and I gave it 3.5 stars. Then I read The Dragon Reborn, which is the third book in the Wheel of Time series, which is fantasy, and this is actually a reread. I'm rereading the entire series, and in this series we are following a group of like 20-year-olds maybe, and they are like, in the beginning of the series, like we learn that one of them is the Dragon Reborn, who is like this, like the reincarnation of like a hero from like a couple thousand years ago that will be reborn to basically fight against the Dark One and break or save the world, basically. And so we know that like one of those characters is that Dragon Reborn, and they are like, they learn that from one of the Aes Sedai, who is like a sorcerer-ish, and they are then like going on, some quests, some missions, going like all over the world. And in this third book, we actually focus more like on the side characters, not like that one, there's the Dragon Reborn, even though the book is called The Dragon Reborn. Like in this book, the actual Dragon Reborn is barely in it, which I thought was funny, like even the first time that I read it. So like, it focuses more on the side characters, which I love because I actually like some of these, like two of the side characters more than I like the main character. And in the first time that I read it, this was definitely the book where I really like absolutely started loving those two characters. So it was really, really fun to be back. I loved seeing all that happened here. I loved to see like when I really started to love these characters, and yeah, it was super fun. I gave it 4.5 stars. Then I read With a Vengeance, which is a mystery thriller, and we're following Anna, and she has invited like everyone that is responsible for destroying her family into like a train that will only stop like at the final stop at the destination. And the goal that she has is to have all of those people together and basically make them like confess like why they did it. And like once they're all there, like someone is killing them like one by one, and it's definitely not Anna, because her goal is to have them like pay for what they did like in prison, not to have them die. So she has to like protect those people that she hates, and has to like figure out who is killing all of them. And like, I was having fun at the beginning, and it was definitely, interesting, and I was curious about what's happening. I was invested, but at the same time, like, it was very slow moving. And then when you got to like not like the biggest reveal of like who was, the killer, but like another big reveal / plot twist, whatever you want to call it, I like saw that coming from a mile away. So like, it wasn't that twisty. So I didn't love it, but it was still definitely fun. It was still entertaining. It was still a good time, and I gave it 3.5 stars. Then I read The Ninth Reign, which is book 1 of the Winnowing Flame series, which is fantasy. And we are following 3 characters mainly, but we start, I think, by following Vintage, who is an explorer, and she has hired an Aboran called Tor to explore with her. And so the Aborans are not humans. They are like stronger, and they used to have like a thriving society, but now they are dying down, and Tor is no longer like with the rest of these people because he doesn't really want to, just see them die. So he is exploring with Vintage, and then they run into a witch that has like escaped, because the witches in this world, they are like all captive. And so she has escaped, and she like joins forces with them, and they are all like trying to learn more about the Jurelia, because the Jurelia have like invaded their world 8 times, and every time they call it like one of the reigns. And there is talk that they will happen again, so like the 9th reign will come. And so they are investigating like about the Jurelia. They find some artifacts, they find things that were left behind, And at the same time, we know that the Aborans are trying to like figure out how to save themselves, like how to save their species, their society as a whole. And like it was so fun. It got very crazy at one point, like some things I was not expecting happened. It was very crazy. Like I loved all of the reveals. And I also really, really love the characters, like individually, but also like their interactions. And like the only complaint is that it was sometimes very slow for me. It was very slow moving, but like I still had such a good time. I still love the characters. And now that I'm more into the world and like it's such a really cool world, like it was so interesting to learn about, I think I will like the other books in the series even more, but I still really like this one, obviously, and I gave it 4 stars. Then I read the Judas Strain, which is the 4th book in the Sigma Force series, which is like sometimes sci-fi, sometimes more fantasy, and also like thrillery. And we follow like members of the Sigma Force. And in this one, we learn that there is a virus that has been dormant for like centuries that is, emerging again, and it's infecting people and it's like killing people. And so the members of Sigma Force are, trying to like investigate about that virus, and they're trying to, find a cure for it. And at the same time, we are following characters who are like taking care of patients. And at the same time, there's another organization that's like the enemy of Sigma Force that is like, evil and wants to get the virus for themselves for their nefarious reasons. And we are like following all of these characters. I think we are like in 4 different locations. And obviously, then everything comes together. And we also actually see a big part of like 2 of the characters' like personal lives and like getting connected to the story, which was really interesting as well. And, it was very fun. And at the end, some of the characters definitely had like a different ending than I was expecting. So that was interesting for sure. And yeah, it was fun. It was a good time. Also, there are always like connections to like real life history. Because like, obviously this is sci-fi / fantasy. But there is always like a connection to real life events. And that is like really cool to see as well. And yeah, it was very fun. I really like to see like how everything came together and like all of these connections, and I gave it 4 stars. Then I read A Court of Silver Flames, which is book 4 in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, which is fantasy romantasy? I never really know, but there's fantasy and there is romance. And so in the series, like in the beginning, we start following Farah, who is a human, and she gets like caught up with the Fae, and she like in the beginning is trying to help like break a curse that is happening in the Faelands, and then it like gets much bigger than that. And the first 3 books we were following Farah. In this one we are actually following Nesta, who's one of Farah's sisters. The previous book, I mean not the previous, because the previous was book 3.5, but like the 3rd book was my favorite in the series. I had so much fun, and this one I definitely did not have nearly as much fun, because like I was liking the fantasy plots, I was liking the action when we were getting it, but it was mostly just focusing on the romance. Like there was just so much of the romance and so little of what I cared about. And so, I didn't have nearly as much fun. Like towards the end, it definitely got more like into the fantasy action side of things. So like definitely enjoyed it more than the rest. But yeah, I didn't enjoy it nearly as much as, the previous one. And as much as I expected, because like I had been enjoying the books more and more as they progressed. So like I liked it. I just did not love it. And I gave it 3.5 stars. Then I read Deadly Occupants, which was a horror book, and in it we were following a group of 4 friends, and at the beginning of the book they go to a haunted house, and after they go to that haunted house, strange things start happening in their own house because they're all roommates, and also like in their lives in general. And like we are mainly following one of them, like it's from the POV of one of them, and then we have, the 4 friends when they come together, but it's like from the POV of only one of them. And like when we were in the house experiencing the creepy things happening, I was enjoying it. I was creeped out. I was having a good time. But then it was just like so much about the romance of like the main character. And like, yes, it does play a big part in the story, but I just did not care in the slightest. Like I was not having fun with all of that. And then when we got to the reveal, like I thought it was pretty obvious that that's what was happening. I didn't have a good time, although like the very end of the book was the kind of ending that I like in horror books. So like, points for that. But overall, it was not fun, and I gave it 2.5 stars. Then I read The Pariah, which is book 1 in the Covenant of Steel series, which is fantasy. And we follow Alwyn, and he was raised in a group of outlaws, and he enjoyed his life. But then after some things go wrong, after some betrayals, he has to leave like all the people that he knew and like the places that he knew, and he ends up fighting for the king. Like he becomes like a soldier, and he's fighting for the king because there is this war against who they call the Pretender, because the Pretender claims to be the son of the like bastard son of the previous king, so like he should be king after, not like the person who's king now. And he like the woman in charge of his like part of the army, she claims to have some like prophetic visions. And there's also like a very interesting plot with a book that Alwyn is given, and I'm sure that like we will learn more about that in the future, and I'm very interested about that. Like I really like that part, and like I was enjoying it, but I wasn't loving it because I feel like every time I got like settled into a place and like a group of people, Alwyn moved on to like somewhere else with another group of people, like, and that happened like 2 or 3 times. And so I wasn't absolutely loving that, but like the end, like the reveals that we got at the end and like where it seems to be leading, like that was so cool. And so I definitely want to keep reading the series, like for that and like the plot about the book. I am very, very interested to see where it goes. So I didn't absolutely love it, but I can definitely see the potential in it. And I did really like the ending, and I gave it 3.5 stars. Then I read Morningstar, which is the 3rd book in the Red Rising saga, which is sci-fi. And in the world of this book, society is divided into colors, like groups of people that are divided into colors. And so at the top, the people with like all the power are the golds, and then there are a bunch of colors, and at the bottom are the reds. And we follow Darrow, who is a red, and in the beginning of the 1st book, both he and his wife are sentenced to death, and she does actually die, but Darrow is saved by a group of rebels. And when they save him, they like have a whole plan, and their plan is to make Darrow a gold, like physically change him because they are physically different, and also teach him how to behave as a gold, and then to have him infiltrate the golds and just basically destroy them from the inside. And so we see that happening. And like the 1st book was not my favorite, but I could definitely see the potential of me absolutely loving the series because the premise sounded like something that I would absolutely love. And so in the 2nd book, I already liked like way more than the 1st. And then the 2nd book ended like in a crazy way. So like in this book, we had to deal with like the aftermath of all of that. And this book was insane, like in the best way possible. I was hooked from page 1. Like there were things happening from page 1. Like there was so much action. There was so much happening. There was like, it was so intense, and like I was not prepared for honestly anything that happened in this book. And the last part of the book, it was like a roller coaster of emotions. Like I felt every possible emotion in those like 80 pages. Like I was unwell reading this. And this was actually the end of the initial trilogy in the series. So like it has a a somewhat satisfying ending, which is not like the happiest ending, although it was actually happier than I expected. So like in the end, I just was satisfied enough. Obviously I'm gonna continue with the series, but like I really like the ending of this initial trilogy. And yeah, I loved everything about this book. There were obviously moments in which I was suffering and I was in pain and were not fun, but I loved this book so much, and it was perfection, and I gave it 5 stars. Then I read A Tangle of Time, which is the 2nd book in the Hexology series, which is like fantasy, mystery, cozy. And we follow Iz and Warren, who are the couple, and they are the hexologists. And basically Iz can perform like some magical spells, which is why she's an exologist. And they investigate some mysteries, specifically like magical mysteries. And in this book, they are investigating the death of someone that had actually been in contact with, like very close to that person's death. And they actually like find the body. And then like very strange things happen. Even like with the crime scene itself, like it seems to change. And there are other like changes happening in the world that are very strange. And like they don't really know what's happening. Like we, the readers, know like more than the characters, because we are like noticing the changes happening and the characters aren't. So that was also really fun to see. And I just absolutely love these characters because like it is very cozy. Especially the first book was very cozy, which is not really my thing, but I just love the characters so much that I wanted to, continue with their story. And this one was definitely less cozy, especially towards the end. Like there was some crazy things happening, like, and I mean that in the best way possible. And also there is like a mystery about Iz's father that we learned a little bit in the first book, and we definitely learned a lot more about it in this second book. And I think we'll learn, even more in the third. And yeah, I really liked it. I was having, so much fun. I was very invested, and I continue to absolutely love the characters. And I also really liked where like the end of this book seems to be leading. So yeah, I had a lot of fun, and I gave it 4 stars. Then I read The Tyranny of Faith and The Trials of Empire, which were books 2 and 3 of the Empire of the Wolf trilogy, which was fantasy. And I had read the first book like a while ago, and I decided to, just to finish the series. And so in the series, we start following Vonwald, who is a justice, which means that basically he goes around the empire and makes sure that the laws are being followed. And if he sees that they're not being followed, he can be, the judge, the executioner, like all of it. And you follow Helena as well, and she is basically like an apprentice to Vonwald. And you also follow Bressinger, who is also part of their group, and he used to be a soldier. And they, in the first book, they encounter like an enemy that has a lot of power. And then in the second and third book, we see them like they're trying to save the empire basically, and like fight that enemy. And we see like we learn a lot about the magic. We learn a lot about their like gods as well, and like the plane of existence of the gods. And there's like betrayal, there's a lot of action, and I really, really like them. The second book I gave, so like Tyranny of Faith, I gave 4 stars, and The Trials of Empire was definitely my favorite. It was very like intense, and I gave 4.5 stars. Then I read a bunch of Christmas horror books for a video, and I read, I think, 4 short story collections, and like I read them all sort of back to back, and like I can't really separate them that well anymore. Like I know that I like some stories more than the others, but like in all of them, and I actually rated them all the same. So I'm just going to be talking about all of them together. And so they were 12 Days of Christmas Horror, Christmas in the Empty Cabin, Season's Creepings, and Silent Fright. And like I said, they were all short story collections of Christmas horror stories. And I liked some of these short stories more than the others, but I don't individually remember that much about them. But I will link my video for that in the description, where I talk about the books separately, but I ended up giving them all 3.5 stars. And then there were 8 other Christmas horror books, but those I remember individually because they, each have their story. And so the first one was Candy Cane Kills Again, which is actually the sequel of Candy Cane Kills, which I read like the previous year. And in this one, we are following, in the first book, we start following a family that goes to spend like Christmas Eve on, like they rent a place. And then they learn that that was the site of, a massacre of like a few years back. And the killer was Candy Cane. And we learn a little bit about Candy Cane, and, then it becomes like a slasher. And in this second book, we are following like the events after that, like immediately after, like it's the next day, and we are following, the survivors and also Candy Cane still, and we learn more about Candy Cane's story. And honestly, like it was very sad, like more sad than I was expecting, but at the same time, it was very gruesome, it was very brutal. It was definitely less Christmassy than the first book, but technically was set like on Christmas Day. So, the setting was definitely there. And yeah, the ending was like absolutely what I wanted it to be. So I really liked it and I gave it 4 stars. Then I read Christmas with the Dead, which was actually a short story. It was like 20 pages, 20 something pages. And we're following Calvin, and Calvin was determined to celebrate Christmas, even if he's the only person left alive. Because like everyone else around him is a zombie now, basically. Like the zombie apocalypse has happened, and they either all became zombies at the beginning or like in the months following. And so he's the only person left alive, but he is determined to celebrate Christmas. So we follow him as he, braves the outside, as he goes to the store to get decorations, to get food, and as he, encounters zombies on the way, and then he goes home to celebrate Christmas. And it was very fun. There was obviously, some action with the zombies, and the ending was actually like heartwarming, which I was not expecting, but I really, really liked. So honestly, like I wish it had been longer. Maybe not like a full novel, but at least like novella length. I honestly wish I had more time with this character because I really, really liked what I read. And yeah, it was really fun, but it was really short and I gave it 4 stars. Then I read Nosferatu, and this one was definitely the longest one. And sadly, I didn't like it. Spoiler alert, I didn't like it. And there was a serial kidnapper called Charles Manx, and we were following Vic. And Vic, when she was like 17, maybe, I know that she was like late teenager, she had an encounter with Manx, but she actually like was able to escape. And now, many years later, Manx has kidnapped Vic's son. And so obviously, she wants to get her son back. And this was very slow, extremely slow. I was bored. Like, I did like the magical elements that we got with... Oh, and this was like part of the Christmas video because Manx took the kids that he kidnapped to Christmas Land, which he said that it was a place where kids didn't have to be sad ever. And it was like a place that existed in his head, but also like obviously he did take the kids somewhere. And like I was saying, I like the magical elements that we got with Manx and with Vic and with another character, but that was literally the only thing that I liked. And there was like a bit more action at the end, but still overall, I didn't love it. And I gave it 2.5 stars. Then The Christmas Morning Massacre was novella. I think it was novella length. Maybe a little longer. I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. But we learned in the beginning of this book that there were 2 girls who were murdered like in consecutive years in the same town by a killer that they call the Ravenhill Butcher. And some years later, a group of friends goes to like stay that town the days leading up to Christmas, and it's like 5 or 6 girls and then like the brother of one of them. And there is like someone watching them. There is someone who starts like killing them one by one. And honestly, like I hated every single character in this book. Like they were all so annoying. And honestly, I was happy to see them go. Like I was happy when they were being eliminated from the book because I couldn't stand any of them. Like they were really pissing me off. And like, were they even friends? I don't think so, because they treated each other like terribly. They were always arguing and they were just getting on my nerves. Like I was just happy to see them go. There were like a few moments of action that were fun, but like that was it. At least it was short. Like I wasn't really bored. I was just kind of annoyed. And at a few times when there was the action happening, I was having a little more fun. And yeah, I gave it 2.5 stars. Then I read You Better Watch Out, in which we were following Higai, who in the beginning of the book is like pretending to help some people so then he can rob them. But it turns out that those people actually kidnap him. And so he wakes up in a seemingly deserted town. There are some other people there, but they were all kidnapped as well. And they realize that as, they wake up. And there is like someone hunting them. And they soon realize that they all sort of like have something in common, and that might be why they are there. So like it was a slasher, and like it was fun, and I did like the reveal, but it was like, nothing crazy, nothing special. It was just okay, and I gave it 3.5 stars. Then I read The Dead of Winter, which was actually nonfiction, and it was like about different legends and myths about Christmas and about different celebrations of Christmas, and like how different it is in different countries, like the magical beings that are associated with Christmas in different countries, and also how the celebration of Christmas, like the one that exists now, like how it came to exist, because it used to be very different. And it was very interesting. Like when I chose this book to read, I actually didn't know it was nonfiction. Only when I was like really about to start it did I realize it was nonfiction. And yeah, it was really fun to learn about all of this. It was not what I was expecting, but it was fun. I really enjoyed to learn all of it, and I gave it 4 stars. Then I read Christmas Eve on Haunted Hill, and we were following Luke, who had gone back to his hometown on Christmas Eve, and many years before, his father had actually killed like their entire family on Christmas Eve, and only Luke had survived. And so he had basically gone back to the town to finish what his father had started and like die. And he actually runs into a friend at a bar who is trying to convince him to like not go forward with his plan. And then we also see like at the house where the massacre happened, like it's like people say that it's haunted, especially on Christmas Eve, and there is a group of people who is going there to explore the house, and so we see them, being haunted. And at the same time, like Luke and his friend then get to the house as well, and they all have to, fight this haunting together. And like in the beginning, I wasn't really into it, but as the book progressed, I definitely got more interested in the plot and the characters, and in the end I definitely enjoyed it more. Again, it was nothing crazy, but it was okay, and I gave it 3.5 stars. Then the last Christmas horror book that I read was It Came Upon a Midnight Clear, and at first I thought it was like just one story. Then as I started to read it, I thought it was a short story collection, because the first 3 stories were all separate, like following different characters set in different places. But then when I got to the 4th chapter, everything started to connect. So I was like, okay, so maybe this is like different stories that all connect in the end. And that was exactly what it was. Like there was a connecting thread like throughout all of them, and then in the end everything really did come together. And so mainly like we started following actually Santa and like his elves, and there was like some entity, some magical being that appeared to Santa, and like it was not a nice creature. And then we also followed Trap, who was the owner of a company that produced like kids toys, and he was making like everyone work overtime around Christmas, and like everyone hated him. And he was also visited by something. And then there were some kids who wanted to have more days off from school, so they summoned a creature to give them like snow so they wouldn't have school. But what they summoned was also like not as nice as they expected. And then you follow like other characters in other places, but there is always like something that is either summoned or just appears to these characters. And like, yeah, it's not a nice something. And in the end, like everything came together. And like, I absolutely loved how it all came together. I loved how it all was connected. Like all those different characters, all those different settings, like everything was connected, and it was so cool. And like the very, very end, I was hoping it would go in the direction that I wanted it. I was hoping it would have like the horror ending that I like, and it really did. So I also really, really love the ending. So yeah, it was so much fun, and I gave it 4.5 stars. Then I read Look Out for the Little Guy, which is the Ant-Man book. This is a book that in the, Marvel Cinematic Universe, Ant-Man wrote. And it's crazy that this book actually exists in real life. And my bestie actually gave it to me on my birthday. And I read it actually on Christmas Day, because I was like, I just want happiness. Like I want a book to make me happy. And so I decided to read this book, which is, every time I look at this book, I'm like shocked that it exists like outside of the movie. You know what I mean? Like that's crazy. But yeah, I read this book, and honestly, like it wasn't exactly what I expected it to be, because I expected it to be just like silly, goofy, fun, and definitely like was at times, but also like it was pretty deep at the same time. And like when we were talking about the events of Endgame, I actually got emotional. Like I got emotional with a book that shouldn't even exist. That's crazy. So it was definitely an crazy experience. I am, again, still shocked that I have this book in my hands, that it's real. But yeah, it was very fun, very deep at the same time, very emotional, which like wouldn't be for anyone who's not obsessed with the MCU like I am. So for anyone who's not like obsessed with Marvel, this book would probably not be, fun or good even, but like for me, I loved it. Like all the emotions that I went through with this book, crazy, because I'm so like connected to these characters. Like I love them so much and I care about every single one of them so much that I love the experience of reading this book. Like it was so fun the whole time. Perfection. I loved it. And like for me, in my heart, it's definitely 5 stars. And then the final book that I read in December. And like I did start another book, but it's very long and I haven't finished yet. And it's already 2026. So the final book that I read in 2025 was I Who Have Never Known Men, which is, I guess, like dystopian and just like general fiction. And we follow a girl that is a prisoner, and she is a prisoner with 39 other women. They're like in cages and they don't know why they're there, and we don't know why they're there. And this main character that we follow is like the youngest of all of them there. And so all of the other women, they talk about their lives like outside because they all remember living, outside of those cages before and like being taken there. But this main character that we follow, she's very young, and she was like, especially when she was taken there, she was very young. And so she doesn't know anything other than like where she is now. And so she doesn't really have any preconceived notions of how the world should be. So she's like trying to make sense of the world that they live in now, which was really interesting to see. And the others at first, like they don't want that, but then they all end up like working together. And it was very interesting. It was very like confusing. There are definitely like 3 distinct parts to this book, just in like what's happening. And the first 2 I really liked. I was, really invested. The third one was definitely like my least favorite. So like I didn't, absolutely love how it ended, but overall it was very interesting. I also really like the conversations that were had in this book as well. And yeah, it was very interesting. And something that I already knew going into it, and I guess maybe you should know going into it, is that there is no explanation at the end. Like you never learn like why they were there and like what happened to the world outside. Like you never really learn anything, really. So like sometimes that really bothers me, sometimes it doesn't. In this case, I wasn't really bothered that we didn't have that explanation. And yeah, overall, I really liked it. It was definitely, very interesting, very thought-provoking, I guess. And I gave it 4 stars. And yeah, those were all the books that I had to tell you about that I read in the last 3 months, of 2025. And that is everything for this video. So thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you have enjoyed it. And if you did, give it a like and subscribe, and I will talk to you next time. Bye!